heater, your family will have an endless supply of hot water for everything you need to do. Rinnai, hot water for all. Learn more at rinnai.us.
The West has spoken. Well, at least part of it has. That was Bernie Sanders celebrating a resounding victory in 3 Democratic presidential caucuses last night. NBC News projects the Vermont senator will claim victory over Hillary Clinton in the Hawaii contest. He's also the projected winner in Alaska, as well as the Washington State caucus, which has 118 delegates up for grabs. Sanders is now looking ahead to Wisconsin, which will hold its primary a week from Tuesday. And joining me now from Atlanta is Jason Johnson of TheRoot.com. From Madison, Wisconsin, Ruth Conniff of The Progressive Magazine. And from Miami, Yamiche Alcindor, national reporter from The New York Times. And Jason, I'll start with you. Happy Eastern. Good morning to all of you. And Jason, one of the narratives that we've heard, and I've actually heard even on my social media this morning, is Sanders supporters unhappy with the fact that in their view, Sanders' victories last night are not getting enough play. What say you?
I say that they were very late victories. And so there's so much play you're going to get when some of these results aren't going to come in until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Look, you know, Joy, this is a great victory for Bernie Sanders. It's something he can be proud of. I think especially in Washington State, where it looks like Hillary Clinton may have not won one county. But the fact of the matter is he's still down by 300 pledged delegates. So it's a victory, but it's not necessarily changing the overall dynamic. He's still got to get about 58% of the delegates from now on to catch up and possibly beat.
And Ruth, you know, to that point, you have had Sanders, and he said it in his opener there, with the opening that we played for the segment, kind of brush off the South and those victories that Hillary Clinton won as a conservative part of the country, sort of implying that where he's winning are more important places to win than where Hillary Clinton is winning. Is that a legitimate argument?
Well, some of the places where Hillary Clinton is winning are going to go Republican in a general election. So in that sense, you can say, look, this is not going to say a whole lot about what happens in November. You know, I think that clip that you played was actually from his rally in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday. I was there. I think a lot of the significance of what he was saying is this is momentum. This means that even though there's been a lot of talk about Sanders should just drop out, Hillary's going to be the nominee, you know, you see the party, you know, a lot of the electeds and a lot of the party officials trying to push for viewing Hillary as the nominee now. That's not really happening. He's picking up steam now with these big victories, the margin of the victory, the enthusiasm for him, the number of young voters who overwhelmingly prefer him. I mean, all of that he's trying to make the case is carrying him forward all the way to the convention. I think there's no reason at this point to believe that he won't go all the way to the convention. I think it's true that it's a bit of a steep climb to get 57, 58% of the rest of the delegates, but I don't think it's over for Sanders, and I think you're going to see in Wisconsin a week from Tuesday that there is a lot of momentum behind him, just a lot of turnout for him and a lot of young voters supporting him, and that's the significance of these big wins.
And Yamiche, talk a little bit about Wisconsin and the significance for Bernie Sanders, because we get back then to a primary, right? Sanders obviously does very well in caucuses in more sort of less diverse states, shall we say. But when you go to a place like Wisconsin, which is not the most diverse place in the world, I think it only has about a 6.5% African-American population. But does Sanders need to win in a state like that, in a primary, a big primary, in order to prove that he has a path?
Well, if you ask the Sanders campaign, they really are. They try to say, okay, this state doesn't have to be won, but I think Wisconsin, if he wins Wisconsin, it'll prove that he can really win in a big state primary. It's already pretty clear that he can do well in caucuses. He can do well in kind of white, traditional, liberal states like Washington. Washington was a big win for him. He took about 65 delegates from that state. But for him to win Wisconsin would be huge, because he could then make the argument that I'm continuing this momentum, that this wasn't just the West, that this is going to be something that is going to continue. And I think that one of the things that Sanders has always kind of struggled with is this idea of electability. His supporters, a lot of people really like his ideas, but he's really been pushing back on this idea that I'm not just a protest candidate, that I'm really here to win this election. And I think that that's something that's going to be really important for him. So I think Wisconsin is going to be important. If he can pull off that win, I think we're going to be talking about him in a different way.
Yeah, and indeed, and talking about that electability argument, Jason, one of the, I think, one of the factors in the amount of coverage that Sanders gets, and by the way, I will point out that this network did cover Sanders' announcement. I believe was the only one to cover his announcement of his campaign, covered it live here on MSNBC, and covered him last night. His entire speech was played in its entirety last night when he won, I believe, the second out of 3 caucuses last night. So he has gotten coverage. But one of the things that you do hear Sanders supporters say, well, he hasn't gotten as much coverage as Hillary Clinton. And one of the things that we've seen studied now is the amount of free media, of course, that Donald Trump has received. And a lot of Sanders supporters feel that it's unfair that Bernie has not received the same sort of level. You can look at it there, the amount of bought versus free media. Now, Sanders is actually, and this is as of last fall, he had spent $28 million. He had, really outspent Clinton eventually, but he got about half as much free media as Hillary Clinton. But then you look at the next chart, which shows the tone of that coverage. And you can see, and I'll have to just explain this chart, the number at the top is Hillary Clinton, and the higher you are on the chart, the more negative the coverage of you as a candidate is. And I'll read just a little bit of a doc tear from this. This is from, I believe, from Monkey Cage, New York Times Monkey Cage, and it's from last fall, so I'll just give that caveat. And what they said, the graph shows that contradicting the complaints of Sanders supporters to the New York Times, the coverage of Clinton has actually been more negative than coverage of Sanders on almost every day from May 15 to September 14. And this comports with Nate Silver's analysis, which suggests negative coverage of Clinton is common. Meanwhile, Sanders has yet to face a similar level of scrutiny. I'd also note that coverage of Sanders is often focused on his successes, especially as judged by horse race metrics like the size of his rallies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A search for Bernie Sanders rally gives you 432,000 hits in Google News, meaning that when we talk about him, we talk about things like the bird that landed on his podium, right? He gets really positive press. So is it possible that Sanders' problem is not so much a lack of media coverage, but something else?
Well, Joy, there's a couple things to unpack there. One, just about Wisconsin, it's not just that he would want to win another state, but he could then say, I've got Wisconsin, I've got Michigan, I'm a Midwestern and a Western candidate. So that would be something Sanders wants to talk about. But here's the issue. He hasn't been the front runner. So, of course, Hillary Clinton is going to get more coverage than him. But here's the twist that most people don't realize. The longer Bernie Sanders stays in the race, the more the coverage of Hillary Clinton is about the hearse race instead of what's actually going on.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we got to leave it there. We are out of time. But we're going to have much more when we come back. We'll have you guys come back as well. So stay with us.
Don't let dust and allergies get between you and life's beautiful moments. With Flonase Allergy Relief, they won't. When we breathe in allergens, our bodies react by overproducing